All right, hi, good afternoon everyone. My name's Tom Wolf. I'm with a company called Agrimetrics and we run the website sprayers101.com, which happens to be sponsored by Alberta Wheat Commission, Alberta Canola, Alberta Pulse. So thank you for that. It's the world's most popular spraying website. This is Travis Albrecht. Travis is from Schuler and he is a seller of a WEEDit system, which we'll talk about here today. Full disclosure, I've signed an agreement with the manufacturer of WEEDit to help promote it in Western Canada because I believe in it. So there you go. I still remain independent in all other tasks, but I will work for these people to help them make that impact. What is WEEDit? WEEDit is a weed detection system. It's the latest generation of that technology. What the technology is it emits a light. In this case, it's a red light. Upon hitting chlorophyll, it comes back as a near infrared, and that near infrared is the signal that the material is green, and that triggers a nozzle that is situated directly behind that sensor, and that nozzle turns on for a predetermined length, targeting only the weed that was sensed. It works up to 15 miles per hour. The boom height is fairly critical. As you might expect, the nozzle positioning is also critical. The sensors are spaced 1 meter apart. Currently the system goes to 36 meters, which is 120 feet, but it is initially designed for really just 100 feet. So we're pushing the envelope a little bit with the 120. That would be 36 sensors. Now each sensor is divided into 5 channels. And those 5 channels then trigger 5 different nozzles on that meter. So every nozzle is actually at an 8-inch interval. Are you following me? 40 inches per meter divided by 5 is 8 inches. Our nozzles are 40, and they're narrow fan angle. They're quite pointy. Okay, so they're a flat fan. It's a 30 or a 40 degree flat fan. So very precise targeting. And Travis will tell us the local experience in just a few minutes. So that's a good question. Do you get some drift? We will do some work with the nozzles. That's part of the research component I will look after. Right now it's a conventional flat fan nozzle, and it is running at about 40 or so psi. So but it is running a narrow fan angle, and you'll see on the paper the droplets are rather big. So it will drift somewhat, but I think it's about similar to what we're currently doing with our air induction tips. It's very close to that. Okay. So we're in the same realm. We'll do some work on nozzles. We obviously, a common question that you're probably asking yourself is how small a weed can it detect, and we're working on that as well. The company is talking about, what is it, Travis? 2 square centimeters is a threshold. So that would be maybe 2 thumbs. Okay. So we are talking about probably you need a true leaf on that plant for it to be detected. There are sensitivity settings. There are 4 different levels of sensitivity that are available on the system. And you can choose the threshold that is right for the user. For example, in this field, it's the bottom of a slough and there's some moss. So we noticed on a more sensitive setting that it was triggering a lot because the moss was actually being detected as a green material. So we will do some work on that to see what the threshold is. A nice sort of feature of the system is that if you're at this threshold, say you're early season, you got small wild buckwheat, you got cod leaving stage, this and that, and you're not going to trigger the nozzle. It has the capability of running in the background as a broadcast application at a lower rate. Each nozzle is pulse width modulated, which means that the rate of each nozzle can be adjusted by a factor of approximately 10-fold. So I can choose from a 3003 nozzle, it's a 0.3 US gallon per minute, I can choke that down to 0.03 US gallons per minute. In other words, I can spray 10 gallons per acre or 1 gallon per acre, my choice. Okay. This boom is capable of spraying broadcast across the entire width at a background dose of your choice, 50% or less. The idea behind that is if you have cod leaving stage weeds that will not trigger the sensors, they will likely succumb to a low dose of herbicide, which might be 25%, let's just say. You will run a broadcast on 25% of your dose on the whole field. When the weed is large enough to be triggered, it will likely need a larger dose to be killed. That's when the squirt comes on and the full dose comes on for that weed. Okay? There's a lot of creativity that can be implemented with this system. Let me give you 2 examples. Let me give you 4 examples. The obvious one is pre-seed burn-off. The second obvious one is post-harvest burn-off. In winter annuals, maybe perennials left over, whatever. Volunteers, that kind of thing. The third one is desiccation or pre-harvest. Census green. And the fourth one is quite interesting. And this is something that one of the early customers developed, and he farms near Darcy, just near Fisk, on the way from Kindersley, I guess. And what did he do, Travis? He basically set his sensitivity setting very low. So small weeds, small plants didn't trigger it at all.
And then he seeded Liberty canola.
He seeded Liberty canola.
Sorry, Roundup Ready canola.
Roundup Ready canola.
And he didn't pre-seed burn off. And he went in when the canola was really tiny, and the sensors didn't pick up the canola, but the weeds were big enough. So then he used his setup to actually spray the weeds out of his canola in the Roundup Ready.
So for the benefit of the camera, I'll repeat that. He didn't do a pre-seed burn, so he had large weeds in his field. He had a 1-leaf stage Roundup Ready canola crop and he set the sensitivity so low that the sensors were not detecting those crop plants. However, the weeds were big enough to trigger the sensor. So he actually did an in-crop spray of Roundup just to get his weeds and left the canola alone. So those are the kinds of things that can be done. I'll finish off with this one comment. The reason I'm involved is because I believe that the future of our spraying is going to be selecting. Okay, we're making progress in detection. This is just the beginning. Why is it important here? We are in the birthplace of glyphosate-resistant kochia. Right? This is where it was found. And we are no longer spraying glyphosate by itself. And in fact, what is the best practice for delaying the onset of herbicide resistance? Multiple effective modes of action in the tank mix. That's it. That's what Hugh Becky says. He was my colleague at Ag Canada for many years, sat in the office next to mine. That can get expensive. $5 for glyphosate, $10 for Black Hawk, $20 if you put something else in there, maybe $30 if you put something else in there. Who knows where this could go? That's not affordable, but it is when you save 75% of your product. Okay, so it is actually what this technology actually is for us. It is a resistance onset delay machine. Okay, very carefully chosen words. All right, Travis, I'm going to hold it. I'll hand it over to you. Travis is going to talk about the experience locally, and he's also then what we'll do is we'll go over and we'll show you how it works. Could you completely eliminate thistles? That would be a dream. We would all share that dream.
No, I mean you can put on a lot a little bit of.
Yes, so the question is, can you put on a lot? And in fact,
I'll get into the rates here, Joe, like the we spray on our farm now with it. I'll put it in the other pocket, I guess. Okay, yeah, my name's Travis Albrecht. I farm 8,000 acres up by Schuler, Alberta. So we're quite a bit drier than here, and continuous crop. And I found these systems actually on the internet and on a few Facebook groups that I am a part of for agriculture. And they run these things, have been running these things in Australia for 8 years now. So I started talking to the farmers and asking them if it actually does work, because it seems like a pretty big stretch. And they guaranteed me it worked, and they farmed huge farms like 50, 100,000 acres, and they don't spray anything but spot spray glyphosate. So contacted Ramatron, the tech company in the Netherlands, and the Canadian importer here, and brought the first system to Canada last spring. We installed it on a 4720 SP John Deere, which was one of the first ones in the world. They were usually put on ground following wheeled boom sprayers in Australia, and I didn't want to go back in time, so I figured out how to put it on a SP. Took us 4 months to figure out how to put it on. We ran it last spring. We farmed 12,000 then, and ahead of our pulses last spring, because my dad was not a believer in this system at all. So we run a 33% bias on all of our pulse ground, because we seed 4,000 acres lentils. So we run a 33% bias, on everything. And with our tank mix, we have an 800-gallon tank. We run a 1 liter an acre of glyphosate with full rate of aim. So on a 33% bias, you were getting 1/3 of a liter glyphosate on everything, and then wherever it's seen a weed, you were getting the full rate, 1 liter plus the aim, full rate. And the system worked flawlessly for us last spring. And then we still used our blanket sprayer because we run 2 SPs, so I didn't really calculate cost savings, but last fall we took all of our crops off and we were very, very dry, so all that we had left was winter annual weeds behind like your thistles and stuff like that. And we went out, our first tank to do post-harvest spraying. My 800-gallon tank lasted 1,100 acres. And that's running a liter of glyphosate on the weeds. So we sprayed close to 12,000 acres last fall on just over 450 liters of glyphosate, putting 1 liter an acre of glyphosate on the weeds. So our cost savings were really, really huge last fall. And the way it's shaping up this fall, looking to be probably the same thing. So all of our fall spraying will be 100% spot spray. The system works, in my opinion, more than good enough. I had 100% spot spray in the fall. Spring, we still are using, ahead of our pulse ground, we still are running that 33% bias. Ahead of canola and our wheat, we run full spot spray because it's easy to spray out the weeds if one or a few of them are missed that didn't have enough chlorophyll in it to trigger the light sensors. So I was the first guy last year to run a system. I sold 4 of them this winter. 2 are running in southern Alberta here. 2 colonies are running them in southern Alberta. There's 1 in Mankota, Saskatchewan, a friend of mine, and there's 1 sitting in Fisk, Saskatchewan. And put them on a 4940 John Deere, an R4045, a 4430 case, and a 3330. So 3 out of the 4 systems I sold are the 120 feet. The R4045, we did something new that was never ever done with these systems before. It had a chem injection system on it. So we mounted a second boom and put a 3-way valve right below his sectional valves. So he can switch from the John Deere wet boom to our wet boom in 2 minutes. And Carl's actually figuring out how to run his chem injection pump in conjunction with the WEEDit system also for extra cost savings. And Tom was mentioning the Roundup resistant kochia. So Carl's still chem fellows 2,500 acres, and he went out with Roundup and WEEDit, and his fields were clean except for his Roundup resistant kochia weeds. So he went out after with 1.6 liters an acre is the dosage he went in with Liberty, and just full spot sprayed his Roundup resistant kochia weeds in his chem fellow to save himself huge amounts of money on his 2,500 acres chem fellow. So, yes, Tom? Okay. I guess might as well get out and watch the system work, and feel free to ask any questions when we're running. And then we'll go through there's a few demos that the computer runs through after we run the passes, and then we'll get everybody up there to look at the system, because all the sensors are the same as what they'd be mounted on your guys' sprayers, and you guys can have a look at it. Same with the solenoids and the nozzles, they're all the same. So it's just dyed water in there, so if you get sprayed, there's no problem with it.
Hold on, Travis.
Oh yeah, Ken's got a seat
followed
here.
Travis around for the last 3 weeks, and poor Lando over there, where'd he go? Rinder. He runs the tractor. There's no friggin' cushion on the seat. There's bolts sticking out. So I brought you a pillow, man.
Oh, you're too kind, Ken. Yeah, you're too kind.
You have this fancy sprayer on there.
Yeah, but the seat doesn't get wet now. Here's your pillow, Rinder.
So what I've got in my hand is water sensitive paper. We're going to go over there. First thing we're going to do is Rinder's going to run through a quick diagnostic setting, so you can see what it looks like and what it looks like when it runs, to show you the pulsing of the nozzles, the switching off and on of the nozzles. And then we'll make a series of passes, and we'll put water sensitive paper at the base of some of the weeds. It's soft ground here, so hopefully we'll have enough durability of that track.
Yeah, and basically one thing I didn't touch on, because it is infrared light, the best time to spray is actually at night. There will be some misfires you'll see today, and actually canola stubble is even the worst actually, because it's white, and when the red light hits it, it'll actually bounce back a little bit, so you'll see some misfires today. And we're trying to set the sensitivity low just because of the moss here. We're not used to seeing moss in the field at home, right? So it's kind of new.
Let's go over.
Sure. Oh.
That was loud.
Yeah, this is one here, Tom.
So
we can replay.
If you take the old piece of paper away, just throw it to the side and put a new piece nearby. In there.
Is that too far out of scope?
Yeah, we're only 12 feet, hey? So there's a wheat.
And then you can try these two as well.
Wheat, canola.
Did I plant some new ones?
We might be a little further, a little too far out. We only got 12 feet, so
the wheels are going to run
kind of
right
inside the wheels. Yeah, foxtail works. We'll run this time. We're going to run about 7-8 times because we'll run with bias on and bias off. Right now he's going to run with bias off.
Let's have a look.
So there's no doubt it hit this canola, that plant. So on an SP, like I run really hilly country, so when we're 3 feet in the air, we're just spraying longer. And also there's settings in the computer. We got it set right now, spraying 50 mils ahead and behind the weed, and you can go all the way up to 200. I spray at 200. The guys, Ramatron thinks it's crazy, but I'm going from covering 8,000 acres 100% to 20 centimeters ahead and behind the weed with some drift. I'm good with that, right? Okay. So you can go all the way from 50 to 200 with that setting too.
So what we wanted to do was maybe, I think, have we made the point it sees weeds and sprays them? Could you see that pulsing action? So now what we should maybe do is do the bias, and we'll do a bias run.
Where's the speaker, just so when I
Which
run
means,
by? I just don't want to get too close.
We'll now put paper in random spots, and they should all be sprayed, at least somewhat. And we'll put a bias or whatever they decide, those guys. So just put, if you have leftover paper, you can
put 33% bias on now, and just make sure the speed picks it up on the GPS, and then run over, because we'll put the paper down again. So run 33% bias, and then we'll probably just shut it down, and then we'll do the diagnostic in the center. So you can see now the nozzles are on all the time, and then when it hits green, it's giving it a bigger dose.
looking forward to that.
And that's just in crop. Right now, we're still detecting the weeds and stuff like that, right?
What he said. So basically, then what you can do, for those of you who are not familiar with pulse width modulation, the reason our customers want that is because it allows you to change the rate of the sprayer without changing its pressure. Currently, with a rate controller, when you speed up, the pressure goes up, and vice versa. We all know that are spray operators. That means your droplet size changes, your spray drift changes, your coverage changes, whatever else changes. Now with PWM, you set one pressure, and then when you speed up and slow down, something called the duty cycle changes, and that's the proportion of time that valve is open. It's directly proportional to your travel speed. Duty cycle can be varied by a factor of about 10 on this unit. It can be varied by a factor of about 7 on Case and John Deere. That's more than enough in both cases to give you a 7-fold travel speed range. Just imagine what this means. If your maximum speed is 21 miles per hour, you can go as slow as 3 miles per hour and the pressure will be the same. That means now you go over your pivot tracks, you slow down, no worries about that anymore, okay? It's going to be all right. You can slow down.
And it's all stainless, so my old 4720 had the old plastic booms on, so we ripped it off, and it's all new stainless high-pro stuff, so it looks good. And everything that we installed, it looks as close as we can get to factory with adding everything on. Everything's powder-coated, painted, or stainless brackets. Very, very clean installs. When the engineers come over, once we were done the first two, they were, commenting and showing us pictures. By far, we were the best install crew they've ever had in the world. which is kind of nice because we're just farmers and oil field guys from Canada.
And Reinder.
Yeah, Reinder, he's the first actually factory trained technician in the world, as far as I'm concerned. They had to build him a training program and a certificate because we sent him over there, and he does all of our field calls, service calls in the field when guys are broke down or have issues or whatever. Reinder's on the road for parts and service, and I can pretty much build a whole system out of the parts that I have, just to make sure, because biggest thing for me in farming, I've always been let down with parts. So if I was going to sell systems and sell to people, they weren't going to be waiting.
So this is going to cost some money though.
Oh yeah, it costs some money, Joe, there's no doubt. So a 120-foot system is 170,000, and then you're looking like 30 to 50,000 to put it on. Depends how extensive and how fancy you guys want us to get with the install, right? Like when we did a dual boom on that R4045, it was definitely more money because we couldn't run the boom in parallel. The way the R series folds together, we had to run some off the back, some off the front. But you know, Carl's been over the moon with it, just with what he's been saving and the way it works with the three-way valves, all that kind of stuff, right?
So just a bit more research information on the company. The company that manufactures WEEDit is called Romatron. They're a Dutch company, and they've been in the business for approximately 8 to 10 years.
Longer than that.
Even
this
longer?
technology started because glyphosate was getting iffy in Europe in the mid-2000s, like 05, 06. So the first systems were designed to spray the cracks in between cobblestones and only spray the weeds that were growing through the cracks in cobblestones over there. That's how they started. And then in 09 or 10, they took it big scale to Australia.
So in Australia, there's currently several hundred units running. They run as aftermarket installs, or primarily actually as a sprayer sold OEM. So a boom made by Croplands, a sprayer manufacturer in Australia. So we'll sell them a WEEDit boom as well on their sprayer. So they're also running in Brazil and Argentina, and they're currently being demoed in Eastern Europe on the Amazon brand of sprayers out of Germany. So the technology is, you know, we're coming to North America with it now. There's a few, I think, unique agronomy issues. For example, if you are in Australia, you are summer spraying. Basically, that's the word for chem fallow. Because they don't grow crops in the summer for the most part. So they will spray fairly large weeds, but they might spray them 4 or 5 times. So, and they are very concerned about resistance. So they will put an expensive tank mix in, they'll apply it at a high rate, and they might spray 4 or 5 times. Chemical savings on that? That thing pays for itself very quickly. Okay, now let me give you another piece of interesting information. Australia has special registrations for what they call optical spot spraying, for WEEDit. They have labels that allow higher doses of chemicals if they're sprayed with a WEEDit system to ensure that their resistant weed can be killed. It's a herbicide resistance management strategy. We don't have that here. But now our economy is different. We have one crack at it in the spring and maybe one in the fall, and possibly occasionally we'll see in between what happens with the pre-harvest or desiccation. So there's some adjustment for this technology into Canada.
So we had some hard numbers from one of the colonies. They sprayed 18,000 acres pre-seed burn-off. They filled 28 less times, so their efficiency was way up. And they saved 33,000 on their burn-off on 18,000 acres. And that was running a 33% bias. It's just some of the numbers that they come up with. 33,000 on the chemical itself. That wasn't, you know, they didn't factor in the efficiency and the time without filling, right? Because our average tank last fall, like when it was clean, I think my average was like 590 acres a tank. And these basically nozzles are rated at 9.2 gallons, so I should have been empty at 87 acres on regular spraying.
So just to extrapolate, to expand a little bit on what Travis just said, if you follow us on Twitter or on sprayers101.com, you know that we're all about giving you more acres per hour. That's our purpose, more acres per hour. And we tell you to do it by slowing down. How on earth do we achieve that?
That's a big thing.
We achieve that. We want you to slow down because it does a better job. Less drift, better coverage. How do we achieve that? By gaining efficiencies outside of the spray operation. So we fill and we clean faster and more effectively. Just imagine, when we do our simulations, we have a calculator that you can use on spurs101.com called the productivity calculator. You tell it your 8 spray parameters, your tank size, your boom width, your travel speed, etc. It'll tell you how many acres per hour you're doing. You also enter how long it takes you to fill. Now look at this, if you fill in 30 minutes, let's just say 30 minutes, a round number, you're spending 50% of your time filling, because you can empty your tank in 30 minutes, depending on the sprayer and the water volume. And if you fill every 5th tank, your productivity is up by 50, 60, 70%. And you're not driving faster, you're probably driving slower.
Yeah, our client we sold one to in Mankota, farms 24,000 acres, was spraying with two 4440s. He bought a 3330, 100 footer, because he wanted to have everything matched up like mine, 100 feet. And he kept ahead of two 80-foot Seedmasters, sprayed faster, and got more acres done in a day, and sprayed his whole pre-seed burn-off faster than he ever has, going way slower. He sprayed between 9 and 10 miles an hour, but he wasn't filling. He ran full spot spray on his whole farm this spring. And was able to do it with one sprayer and no water hauler.
If you were at Ag in Motion, you saw the Connect platform for the DOT, made by Pattison Liquid Systems. They demoed it. They built a 120-foot sprayer for the autonomous platform. They put a 1,600 gallon tank on it, well, because it can handle it. But their maximum travel speed is 8 miles per hour. So they're going to have to look for efficiencies elsewhere. That's a candidate, I would say, for WEEDit. Right.
And how would it work again for desiccating? How could it work?
Well, this way, if you you need to desiccate, you know, when your pea's yellow, some stay green longer, and those are the ones you have to actually kill with Reglone or heat or whatever you're using. And the sensors detect green. So if it's green, it'll spray, and if it's not green, it won't. So you basically just spot spray.
Or you could run a bias, right? If your peas are 90% ripe, because I'm really hilly, so my hills are always totally ripe. So hit them with, you know, third rate of Reglone, and then as they come into the valley, you know, they get full rate of Reglone. So I didn't even run that last year. It didn't even really dawn on me, but this year all of our lentils will get sprayed like that, just to give guys, you know, real numbers from the field.
That stuff's expensive.
Yep. Yeah, we can save 50 or 60% of that, and not, you know, because everybody switched to glyphosate. Well, glyphosate takes, you know, 2 weeks to dry a lot of, especially when you get thick canopies and heavy lentil crops, it takes forever. I like to go in huge water volumes, so we're running lots of water, which is nice, so Reglone should work really fast. So we always were 15 to 20 gallons of water with our Reglone, and 3 days we were combining, right? And that's where I want to keep it, but if I can save, you know, 50 or 60% of my Reglone and still do that, that'll be a really big money in the bank. And government funding, we're working on it through the new
CAP.
CAP
Everyone
program.
knows Growing Forward 3 is CAP, Canadian Agricultural Partnership. Alberta is unique in the Prairie Provinces for offering farmers cash rebates for 2 technologies. Most of it is livestock and watershed management, as we know. But there are 2 categories in the CAP form. One of them is a $10,000 rebate, up to $10,000, up to 70% of the cost of investment for technologies such as pulse width modulation, such as continuous rinse or recirculating boom modifications, anything that saves water quality. But there is also a discretionary $100,000 rebate for up to 70% of your investment cost for other technologies that are environmentally sustainable. This could qualify for that, and we have 2 people that have applied, and we will see if they're successful. If they're successful, that's a bonus. That's a real bonus.
Yeah, if they get their 100,000 out of CAP, they're looking at about a 1-year payoff, right, on 18,000 acres, right?
So make hay while the sun shines. One last thing I want to say, you know, we heard a lot of good ideas today already about potential other uses of the technology. Think of this, I mean, we're in an irrigation area, there's potatoes, late blight is a big deal in the potato growing areas, and they do, depending on where you are, Correct me if I'm wrong, people, but how many sprays do we do for late blight in the season with potatoes? 6? Okay, can you tell me when you start? How big is the plant when you start?
Just when it's about to close the rows.
When it's about to?
Close the rows. When they're just about,
Okay.
just about touching.
All right. So you would do a complete broadcast. If it had been the case, and I've been to New Brunswick, I've been to PEI, I've been to other places where they grow potatoes, they start spraying earlier because the disease pressure is that much higher. It's conceivable in a situation like that, if you only spray the rosettes, that you can actually selectively spray your fungicide in your first couple of apps.
Yeah, you got
Right? If before closure, you have discrete plants. So that's conceivable. Let's just think along those lines and other uses of that technology. What I like about it, it's a photogenic sprayer. It's on YouTube. Night stuff. Looks really cool. The public,
That's
the
my sprayer,
non-farming public, understands what this does in 10 seconds. It's powerful just for that reason.
We should buy it then.
And loan it to us. I love it. I love it. See the creative funding mechanisms? It's all there. We'll pay him $4 an acre for it.
Yeah, exactly, or less.
All right, I think that wraps up this session. So if you guys want to join me in thanking